So. Good luck.
Good evening and welcome to the July 24th, 2013 business meeting of Richmond Community Schools School Board of Trustees. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now we are ready for the reading of our mission statement.
The Richmond Community Schools mission statement reads, graduate students who are literate, responsible, proficient in state and national standards, and college and career ready.
Thank you, Aaron. And now, Dixie, would you please read our vision?
By 2020, Richmond Community Schools will be the highest performing school system in East Central Indiana.
Thank you. And now we are ready for our first of two public commentaries. Is there anyone wishing to speak tonight?
No.
No one? Okay. Then we are ready for reports and discussion topics.
Our first two reports go hand in hand. Mr. Coddington will give you the quarterly financial report, and if it goes as I think it will, it'll be a natural segue into the presentation of the 2014 budgets. So I'll turn it over to him for the next two items.
Thank you, Dr. Borff. We're 6 months into the year, and we want to spend this evening saying, how'd the first 6 months go? What does that mean that the end of the year is going to look like? How does that forecast into next year? And how does that interrelate with this year's budget? So I'm excited to be here tonight. Year to date, you can see for our cumulative revenue that last year, we had revenue $17,595,000 from the basic grant, $355,000 for $17,949. This year, our revenue in 6 months is $17,489. So basically, we have $500,000 less revenue. And 100% of that revenue is from the basic grant due to the state funding formula. Not unexpected. We have $500,000 less. So we're going to hope that when you see it 6 months, that we've got a little bit reduction in expenditures if we have $500,000 less revenue. Well, there we go. I think I'll even make that bigger because I learned how. But we have board practice. Last year, our expenditures were $18,400,000. This year, our expenditures are $18,246,000. So we're doing this. But look at this. Some of this is timing issues. But if you see our salaries are down $662,000. That's good news because that's going to carry through for the rest of the year. Our benefits are up $550,000, and all of this is timing issues. It doesn't reflect what we're actually going to look like at the end of the year. Last year, we paid perf and turf payments quarterly. You've heard me say this for a year now. This year, we're paying them every 2 weeks, so it's up rather than that. By the end of the year, those will be below last year. So that's where our benefits. Last year, if you remember, the teachers through negotiations, we suspended the VALIC and VEBA payments last year. This year, we're paying new contributions into that. So we're looking forward to the next 6 months. This 6 months is where we thought it would be. Let me then show what goes on to our cash flow. Because the real important thing is where are we going to end the year? Are there any surprises from where we've stated that we thought we would be? And the answer is no. I'm not going to visually challenge you here. We're going to work on some of these numbers. On the revenue side, now I know where these are, so if you'll bear with me. On the state basic grant, you see that in June, right there, we had $2,858,000 in revenue on the state basic grant with the funding formula. In July, it's gone up to $2,989,000. And I've been talking about the change that, remember in June, the DGLF, DOE, the Department of Education, asked us to forecast where we were going to be in September. They also, the new formula change says all-day kindergarten will go in to the formula starting in July. It was always outside of the formula, and we got $1 million in December. So now we're going to get that $1 million over 12 months, of which 6 of them are here, flat enrollment. But that 2,989 is good money. In the end of this year, revenue-wise, we say that we're going to have $35,758,000. But you see that number right there.
You went over that pretty quickly. That is just representing kindergarten money and flat enrollment. Is that what you just said?
Half the kindergarten money and flat enrollment,
Okay.
but yes.
But you said flat enrollment.
Flat
Just wanna
enrollment,
make sure.
yes. So with what we know today, if we have flat enrollment on September, which is 4,760 students, this will be our revenue to the penny. If we have one less or one more, then there'll be an adjustment, and that adjustment will be in November of this year. Now our expenditures. Remember, by state law, we cannot have deficit spending. We must spend what we brought in. So we're only allowed, if we're going to bring in $35,758,000, we can only spend. And for 6 months, every month, you've been getting a financial report that showed us how big our gap was. Now, for the first time, you're going to say, we don't have a gap. We're at a plus $18,000. We're far enough into the year. We're 6 months into the actuals. We're in the middle of July, the end of July now. We've got a lot of the teachers that have resigned or retired. We've got their replacements. We know a little bit about it. It'll cost us. And there's only one thing different in this number that you will see from previous months. You see there under the benefit line, you see this 708, 708, 708,
308.
308. Last year, when we had 133 less students show up, there was a conscious decision made that said in November and December, that we could use up to $469,000 of one-time money to balance the budget this year. Anybody remember that? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, now then I've said, it looks like today we're going to need $400,000. Now, that says instead of 469, it's 400. But guess what I had included in that 469 was the all-day kindergarten coming in at $1 million. We're only getting 500,000 of it. So in theory, if we had to get the 500,000 for all-day kindergarten and $469,000 to balance the budget, should be coming to you saying, I need almost $1 million. But because the prudent spending of the board, the cabinet, the principals, and the teachers, we still can live with that $469,000. So when we do that, at the end of the year, I'll spend $400,000 of one-time money to pay benefits. We've balanced the budget, and we move forward. So what does that mean that 2014 will look like? We've balanced the budget in 2013. Let's look at 2014. If you look here, in 2013, those numbers are very familiar, $35,758,000, which is what our revenue that you just saw on our cash flow statement, $35,740,000 expenses you just saw, and $18,000 balanced budget. 2014, if we have flat enrollment, and we will have 12 months of all-day kindergarten, which is back to the $1 million, so you will see that would be up, and the state budget formula putting more money into education, our state basic grant next year will be $35,868,000, up $800,000. We've got our other revenue flatlined. We've got our expenses pretty much flatlined, a little tick up in utilities and some of this, and we've already balanced the budget for 2014 to the tune of $377,000. For the first time, if we look at this, since January of 2010, that's when we came to you and said, oh, we just lost $1.5 million in revenue, $2 million $1.5 million in revenue. We need some help. And every year we've been fighting to balance the budget. This is the first time I've come to you since 2009 saying, you know, we've got a balanced budget for 2014. We have some educational opportunities should the board, Dr. Borf, and the cabinet say, we could do this, do we do this? And I don't have to come before the board and say, we can do this, what do we want to cut to make it happen? We've got a little play for the first time, and that's good news. Any questions on our 6-month and where we're going to end the year financial report? Because this segues into what our budget's going to look like for 2014. Okay. Hit whatever button we're supposed to. Thank you.
Did you provide magnifying glasses, Mrs. Cotton?
I apologize for that. I had no idea that's what was before you. I knew mine was smaller, but mine wasn't that small that I have, and we will get those replaced, and we will personally deliver a copy that's readable to the board members. I don't know what happened there. But our 2014 budgets, we're going to go over how they're put together. We went over the assumptions the last board meeting, and we look today, we're doing the budget, or the review of the budgets. What was really interesting, somebody said on the radio today, on one of the radio stations, it was told to me like, we haven't revealed the budgets yet. You know? And Brian called a couple days ago, like, we're holding these back for some reason, and that's not, we are following the typical schedule that we've always had. These budgets, we want as much information as we can get put together. We cannot virtually start this budget with accurate information until we've had 6 months financials, which means July 1st. That week is July 4th. You have a little bit of interruption over there, which means that I've got 21 days. Now, we're working on the budget year-round, but I have 21 days to put this budget together. And I really want to take this opportunity to thank Karen Scalf and Janet Elstro. What you're looking at, the budget in front of you that's 84 pages, that's been condensed. We have 5,300 line items and 160 pages that go into that. Those 84 pages turn into a 24-page PowerPoint presentation. So we're condensing this in honor of Tony Broadwell, who I understood liked to go line item by line item. So I'm trying to condense the 5,300 line items to do that. So tonight we're going through the review process. The review process says, this is the budget, I'm going over it, look at it for the next 2 weeks, call me with any changes. The cabinet will be looking at it. Dr. Borth and I have gone over it. We're looking at it. There'll be possibly some minor changes within the next 2 weeks and any suggestions that the board might have. Then we will come to you the next week, the next board meeting, and say, we've now had a chance to review the budget. Will you give me permission to advertise the budgets? And this was in your board packet. We have a budget presentation. And if you say yes at the next board meeting, we've already got the dates. We will publish the advertised budget on August 16th and 23rd. We will come back for a public hearing at the regular scheduled board meeting on August 28th. We will get that input, make any changes that need to be done, and we will ask a formal acceptance of the adoption of the budget on September the 11th. We will wait 10 days to see if there's a petition remonstrance against our budget. If that's not done, we will submit the budget to the DOE and the DLGF. They will hold it, look at it, and scrub it through their eyes, and we hope to have a 2014 budget by December of 2013. So let's go over the forms, and all of this should be very, very familiar because this presentation is very similar to the one that I've done for the last 9 years. Should be. It's the same forms. Remember, this is an 18-month budget. Form 1 is what do we expect to spend in 2014? By salaries, benefits, services, water, insurance, travel, utilities, supplies, equipment, technologies, dues, and subscriptions. So if you will look from pages 1 to 34, when I get you a budget that you can read, those will be the anticipated expenses that we will have next year. Form 2 says what income will you get outside of property taxes next year in each one of these funds. We have license excise, PTRC, Cadget, financial institution. We have different revenue sources that come, and we have to estimate what those revenues will be. So it's really easy. Form 1 says how much we're going to spend. Form 2 says how much other revenue we're going to get. You subtract Form 2 from Form 1, and the difference is what our levy will be, or our taxing rates. Now we look at this and we realize that each fund has different goals, and they're funded differently. Some are need-driven. Makes sense. If you have a payment of $1.7 million in a pension bond, we need $1.7 million. They're not going to give us 1.3, and they're not going to give us 1.9 either. They're going to give you what you need. So that would be your pension bond and your debt service. They want to make sure that we have the revenue to pay our debts. Some funds are rate capped, and that's capital projects. It's not dollar capped. It's not need capped, because we can create a real need for capital projects, but it's rate capped. Our rate cap is basically at about 22.5 cents because of levy neutrality with the pension bond. So that's why we really want a higher assessed value. Now follow this. If you have an assessed value of $1.4 billion and you have a rate cap of 22 cents, I get $144,000 per penny. If we have an assessed value of $2 billion, then I get $200,000 a penny. 200,000 times the 22 pennies that we need is more than 144. So it's hurt us that our assessed value has gone down from $1.6 billion to 1.4. And we don't have an assessed value for next year yet. That's why I use 94% of this year's assessed value rather than 100%, because if we would ever used 100%, we could really foul up our budget opportunities. And some funds are state controlled, and the general fund is 100% state controlled. I shared, who did I share with? Who did I meet this morning? The formula. We have a state formula for the general fund that's 12 pages long, and I mean A plus B minus 3 times 7.65. It isn't one complex formula, and that is state controlled, how it works, and the money that we get. And some funds are board controlled. As I go through some of our, today, we will see that by the end of the year, we will have a cash balance in rainy day of $3 million. And do you know how much money we'll have the authority to, that Dr. Boroff, the cabinet, and the authority to spend that, how much of that $3,097,000? None. If we're to spend a penny of that cash balance after next year, we have to come to the board controlled, said, could we apply to the state for an additional appropriation to the rainy day fund, because there's no appropriation, for X amount of dollars to do this. If you agree, you give us permission, we petition with the state. So you can't get any more control over a fund than you have a rainy day fund. And that's to ensure that that money's being spent on students, for students, and for the educational opportunities of students. Okay, I've said this year in and year out. We advertise high. Since we can only lower the rates, we can't raise them. Now, when we say we can lower our, when they get this back, we can, when the state says reduce your budget, there's 3 ways to reduce your budget. I can reduce our cash balance. I can reduce our spending from July to December, or I can reduce spending from January to December of next year. So when I get a budget in December from the state, and they tell me, you've got $6.1 million in capital projects, we want it to be 3.7, I will cut one of those 3 lines. And it will be the 2014, I'll tell you, we're not going to cut the cash balance, and we're not going to cut this year's spending. We will cut next year's spending. Form 4 is the resolutions of appropriation, shows the advertised summary of all appropriations for each taxing fund and the tax rate that we will be advertising. Form 4, pages 44 to 52. Well then, our capital project or bus replacement. No news here. All these all look pretty familiar. But we've got 60 buses in our fleet. We produce them at the average of 4.2, 5.4, 9.5. Why do we have them all over the board like that? If anyone's been here long enough, it was before my time, but I know that must have been, take 12 years off of that, what is that, 2006? Was my time, 7. This bus fleet right here is when we had to buy 10 buses for Carpenter, and they did that. So we're trying to get us a cash balance of $528,000. So when we buy these 9, while it looks like we're going to buy $1,557,000, we will take that cash balance off of it and try to have as flatlined as we can with the school bus replacement fund. Capital projects. They ask us to look 3 years in advance, but they really want us to zero in on 2014 and be pretty dad-burn specific on what it is we're going to have. We meet every Monday morning with John and Glenn to go over our capital projects needs, the facility needs. We meet once a week with the cabinet, with Dr. Boroff. We meet with the principals, what needs to be done and what are they. Now, our capital projects in your budget is page 59 to 84. So it's 25 pages long. The 25 pages, I'm going to narrow down to understand that we're going to advertise building acquisition, construction, improvement, $1,397,000. Energy maintenance, emergency maintenance, $800,000. Purchase of fixed or mobile of equipment, $105,000. Copier lease, technology, professional services, future projects, and levy neutrality. So we're going to advertise a budget in capital projects of $6,185,000. We're not going to get $6,185,000. This year we got $3,100,000, and last year we advertised a budget of 5.9. We have this built in by building of where the cuts. The first $1.7 million in cuts is going to be levy neutrality. Capital projects fund's not going to pay for that. The pension bond will. The second one is for future projects will be cut. That $200,000 we put it in. This is to protect our levy and our rates to do this. In each one of those is a building specific, how much will be spent. Then we have mid-majors. We have technology. You see the difference in our technology fund. Now this should start coming to light. So, whoa, technology, Bob. You've spent $700,000 every year. You've cut them to $350,000. That's so I can do $350,000 of the mid-majors, because they're going to take $350,000 out of the bond issue. So they'll spend $350,000 out of the bond, $350,000 out of capital projects. They get the same $700,000. Person that wins on this, if there is a winner, is we get to maintain our buildings and do some projects for $350,000 that without the bond issue we would not be able to do. 2015, 16, all three of those are building by building in your packet. Highlights of the budget then, remember that textbook rentals are paid by individuals. There's a group of free and reduced that the state pays for, but the state cannot fund 100% of it. But the state said, you submitted a claim for $289,000. We could only, here's a check for $220,000. You're $64,000 unreimbursed, and the next year, the state allows the local taxpayers to pick up that difference. Last year it was $43,000. This year it's $64,000. The insurance and utilities provision that's been in there since 2004 has remained at $1,384,000. Levy neutrality, excuse me, will not be the 1.8 because we refinanced it. It'll be $1.7 million. And our enrollment projection for this capital projects fund is $4,760. Now, Bob, you've thrown around a lot of numbers. You're doing it. What happened? You said you advertise high and it comes in lower. So I want to give you an example of last year's advertised budget. Then the DOE comes back and the DLGF says, I'm glad it's nice of you to advertise $50,273,000. We are only going to give you the authority to spend a $46,700. So you see we advertised $37,400. They said, no, we're only going to allow you to spend $36,300 because we believe that's a revenue. But you saw on my cash flow, well, if you're allowed to spend $36,300, the authority to spend, why are you only spending $35,700? Because the number one, we can't be in deficit spending. And if I spend a nickel over the money we bring in, it's considered deficit spending by the new state rule law of the definition of deficit spending. The law used to state cash balance plus your revenue minus your expenses, you're okay. So if you had $3 million in a cash balance and you spent $1 million more than you brought in, you still have $2 million in your cash balance. The new law to keep people from spending their rainy day or their cash balance says only what you bring in and you spend. So we know that we didn't get the revenue that we had anticipated. We're going to get revenue of $35,700,000, and we're going to spend $35,700,000. So you look at how much the state comes in, capital projects 5.8 to 4. Debt service, we've advertised 1.4, we got 1.4. Transportation and pension bond worked very well. So we know they're going to cut our budget. Now, 2014, this budget that I've just given you, we're advertising $37,741. Oh, Mr. Coddington, you just raised your last year's advertising budget up almost $300,000. I think we will, because we're going to have more students this fall. I'm confident of that, and I want to have the appropriation to support those students. Debt service, these are two different funds. This was the test lease and the final on it. We need to get a cash balance in our debt service for that, so we're asking for 2 payments. Those 2 payments will be for this, because remember, our first payment in 2015 is in January. And we don't get our 2015 first draw until May, so we need that money accumulating in May and November of next year. Seeing the $6,100,000, and I've gone into that. Our transportation, a little bit, bus replacement, pension bond is down. So we're going to have an advertised budget of about $400,000 more than last year. Our assessed value is up a little bit because of our assessed value was up about $34 million last year. So at 94, we're using the same 94%, that we have more of an assessed value. Of all the slides, of all the things that I've said today, when it comes to customers, our taxpayers, and where we are, this is the page you want to focus on. This is the page. And this is a history. If you see in 2012, we advertised a budget of $1.38. With that advertised budget, we came in with a tax rate of 64, almost 65 cents. So it proves what I want to leave here is a confidence level. It's not what you advertise. It's where the budget's going to land. 2013, we're getting a little better. We reduced our advertised budget to $1.13, and our actuals came in at 55 cents. We've been instructed to build a budget that takes virtually a flat line back from what I understood that was said back in February when we got the bond and everything, said that 55 cents was an anomaly because of they wouldn't give us the second. We didn't receive the second payment for the test leasehold thing. The anomaly was take your debt service back to your 2012 number. So I'm trying to get back to 65 cents. We will come in at 65 cents. While these are guesstimates, because I don't know what our assessed value is going to be, I don't know what levels this, I feel very confident as I stand before you that this is what 2014 will look like for student achievement, to give the resources to the classroom that our students can succeed. I would love to entertain any questions that one might have on this budget presentation. It's a pleasure to stand before you and talk budgets in this riveting time.
It looks like you did such a good job that I'm not sure that there are any questions. And that was a riveting presentation.
That's shocking.
Jeff, I want to thank you and the oversight that you give this budgeting process. I told Glenn and John, they asked what to expect tonight. And I said, what you expect tonight is if Mr. Slifer follows my presentation, we've got a chance. So I better get off the stage.
Really?
Yes, do you have any questions?
Thank you
Until
very
the
much.
assessed value comes out.
Yeah, exactly. But I have a kind of a philosophical question. What if we have a major increase in students? Because, I mean, I just want to make sure we've asked for enough money to cover that.
Oh, that's an excellent question.
Of course it is.
And I've got the answer on here, but I'll try to explain very good. If we get a net 100 students, we will get $788,000 more dollars. If we get 35.7, being flatlined, and we get 800,000, 35.7 and 8 is how much? 36.5. What have I asked for? 37.4. So if we net 100 students,
So you,
I've still got $1 million worth of cuts to make. If we net 200 students, we would still have to cut our general fund budget.
From the appropriation.
From the
Yeah, right.
appropriation, the authority to spend.
But I think the important point is that that's why you estimated the enrollment in November. If we go up 100, then our state grant will go up immediately.
yeah.
So we want, and guess what? If we get that money in September, we have the authority to spend 36.3.
Right,
We just don't have the revenue to support it until we get our September ADM count.
right.
Thank you, good question, but there is plenty of money to make it work.
Plenty of money.
I think that's important to say to those folks who are looking at Richmond Community Schools, given the situation with KC STEM. We want folks to know that we are not going to be scraping by for them. That's where that question came from.
Our next item has to do with strategic planning.
This is what we have.
And I anticipate that soon I will be asking the board for an official approval of a set of goals that will help us develop the strategic plan.
Right.
I think I'll have you relax back down.
Maybe you want to take a nap?
We have spent some time, earlier this year, we spent some time with focus groups. We spent time with teachers, with parents, with employees, with among ourselves. We've worked in executive session, in retreat manner, with the help of a facilitator, Marilyn Watkins from Indiana University East. And we have reviewed the operations. We've reviewed all the input of the various focus groups that I talked about. And we've also re-examined some of our commitments to the staff and to the community that have been made. One of those commitments was that the next set of strategic goals, or the next strategic plan, would not be a radical departure from where we've been. One of the concerns that we've heard time and time again is that we see so many things, and if we just wait long enough, this too shall pass. And what we're wanting to do is to commit to some long-range planning. That's why we've done the 2020. 2020 is not just eyesight, but 20 stands for 2020. Year 2020 is what we're pegging as some of our completion of goal completion. In order to do that, in order to be steadfast and to be constant, this document will look strikingly similar to the document produced last year. Now, let's walk through this document. Again, I'm not asking for approval tonight, but I think we need to get close to that. And maybe the next board meeting, we can actually talk about an approved document. The vision remains the same. The mission remains the same. You remember we had some leadership values that we identified last year, and in last year's document we had leadership values down one side, and then down the other side we had actual activities, events, efforts that demonstrated how we were living the values. Now, though we don't have that same box structure in this document, that same activity will go on throughout the year. It turned out to be a really nice activity to do here in administrative meetings. We asked principals to reflect, and many times, as you saw throughout the year, the reflection produced some pretty amazing results in terms of living the values and acknowledging how we live the values. So we'll do that again. But I do want you to look. I've highlighted one of the changes in the values as a response, or in response to some of the comments that came our way. Systems approach. We are most successful when everyone in our organization works together to achieve common goals. We can enhance understanding, efficiency, and effectiveness by achieving alignment across the system. To that point, that's consistent with last year's, but we add, and recognizing the pathways of education, exploring, discovering, and focusing. What we talked about during our focus groups and during our planning sessions was the importance that students, parents, the community understand what's happening to the students as they're going through the system. Our 4x4x4 arrangement or organization lends itself to certain pathways, almost like our leak point or our pipeline of education that we had almost a decade ago now. This is another metaphor for people to try to understand that their children are on a planned curriculum. There is organization, and one step leads to the next. While we acknowledge that exploration, discovery, and focusing occurs in every single classroom, every single year, regardless of the grade level, what we would like to do as a theme is to say that at the beginning of a career, we're exploring. At the intermediate years, we are discovering, and then at the final 4 years, we are focusing, and we're paying attention to the goals, to the results, to the life after high school. Now that's a leadership value. On the next page, we show how some of this actually comes forward and presents itself in the way of goals. On the focus area, and I'm not sure why some of this hasn't been highlighted. We had a lot more highlighted. Is that the same? Okay, well, I can remember what needs to be highlighted, but there's, in the first area, student achievement, student academic achievement results, we have 90% of students demonstrating age-appropriate proficiency in the use of personal technology. That's a new one, and that's a new one because we talked about and we identified technology as being an important area for development, which has implications throughout our budget, throughout our facilities, as well as students, but the focus will be in student achievement. That category remains fairly constant, though. We still say 90% plus of students K-12 will be reading at or above grade level. 90% of students will still master state and national standards. Those are still our goals. 90% of students graduate with their cohort. We're closing in on that. But those still remain our 2020 goals. The new one is that technology. Under resource management, we have some of the same focus areas that we've seen in the past. 100% of the classrooms provide technology resources consistent with 21st century needs was in last year's focus area set. 100% of employees use available technology effectively. Goes hand in hand with the goal that, or the focus area that we have students also demonstrating. The 100% of employees receiving a minimum of 30 hours of high-quality professional development was in last year's goal or focus set. In number 4, we said each building progresses towards Energy Star certification. We acknowledge that maybe that was poorly stated last year, in that even by 2020, we may not have all of our buildings there, but we have to present some progress at every building. And last year's read, every building will be certified Energy Stars with the Energy Star certification. RCS consistently maintains a balanced budget. That has a slightly different wording because we had something about with no deficit spending. Well, a balanced budget isn't balanced if you have deficit spending. It was a little redundant, so we eliminated that. For marketing and communication, and you'll notice that that's a slightly different category, and all this has been reorganized to comply with the board or the corporation evaluation policy. I think that's 1204.01 in policy. This has been reorganized slightly to be in compliance with that policy. Marketing and communication, we said last year we would like to increase by 25 students. We have that this year. 90% of our students demonstrate awareness of the pathways of education. Mm-hmm. That's consistent with the value that we talked about. And this is deceptively simple.
Yeah.
There is, what we're going to be talking about in this, the pathways, it's not necessarily so simple that a first grader knows that he's in a pathway of exploration. That is not what we're talking about. We want children to know, though, that they are on a continuum. What does that continuum look like? And by the end of a first grader's year, those first graders ought to be able to articulate what their future looks like there at elementary school. By the time they're in fourth grade, they should be able to articulate what they are expecting to happen in the next sequence. And I know this sounds a little hard to believe, but in the intermediate years, we want our students to be able to start talking about college and career readiness with some specificity, with some concrete thoughts. It's not too early to begin, and we'll be working with parents also to begin that thought process as well.
You want comments and questions when you're all done?
When I'm done, right. On the marketing and communication, we also had last year 90% of stakeholders are very satisfied or satisfied with the educational services, and then 95% of stakeholders rate communication with RCS as excellent or very good. Those are goals, and we need to document how close we're getting to those goals. Last year, I'm not so sure that we did all that would be possible to make sure that we've tracked that, and we have to refine some of our surveying methods as well as the survey instruments. For community engagement and partnerships, we have the same that we had last year. This is still a lofty goal, still a major effort, especially to maintain the number of community partnerships at 125 or more. We are doing that. In fact, we probably have far more than 125. But it's a significant effort to maintain, track, and stay attuned to those partnerships. Now, the one that changed, the category that changed was school climate. Under school climate, we have two basic categories. One would be the safe and orderly learning environments. You'll find that those focus areas were included in last year's. And instead of highly effective teachers or employees, we have highly motivated employees. One of the reasons that we changed that terminology is because we heard loud and clear from employees, from parents, that we need to be focusing a great deal of attention on creating a joy, a pleasure in not only learning but also in teaching. And so when you look at what makes an enjoyed experience, a lot of it has to do with autonomy, a lot of it has to do with trust, with a value placed on personal judgment. And so we're looking at highly motivated employees using some of the same measures that we did last year. We have not deviated from that, and that was 90% of our employees are rated highly effective or effective. And I can tell you, through the evaluation process this last year, we're there. Our employees are there. RCS employees demonstrate a 95% plus attendance rate. We have to work on that a bit, and that's a worthy goal. We're working on that. But here's where the difference is. These are new focus areas. 90+% rate their professional development as effective. We will be working to create a rubric of what effective, highly effective staff development looks like. And then from that rubric, we can create ongoing, not just once a year, evaluation forms. I'm wanting to see some weekly evaluation forms, because staff development happens in the Richmond Community Schools constantly. We know one thing about human and adult learning, and that is they learn best when they learn together, and it's ongoing. It's not just here and not just there. So we have every Tuesday organized formal staff development sessions for all of our schools, and we will be looking at developing instruments that can assess on a weekly basis whether we're on track. The principals and the school improvement teams can tweak and move depending on what kind of data they receive. Some are already doing some degree of professional development evaluation, but we would like to streamline the process that every building is doing something similar so that we can also track how that's going, because we need to be supporting that at the central office. If we know what is being said, if they need some more resources, we know how to get to that just in time if we can have that input on that weekly basis. Now, we also have a rating. We want 90% of our staff to rate their employment as satisfying. We need to be working. The reason I'm wanting to call this the board goal statement as opposed to the strategic plan, this is not the strategic plan. The strategic plan is something that we need to work to build with the employees. And so as soon as you adopt your board goals, vision, reestablish your vision, and so on, then we will work to develop that strategic plan. And this may be one of the biggest pieces in that strategic planning, to have our employees work with us to talk about what constitutes a satisfying employment experience. Maybe that will be a rubric in and of itself that we can start working to develop an instrument to measure. So that's where we are. I don't know if I've captured all of your concerns, but that's what tonight's conversation is about, so that you can talk about this and let us know if we're on the right track.
Well, the one area that I feel is missing that we focused on a lot was the joy of learning. And I thought that was going to be a goal with strategies to focus on that joy of learning, because we heard that loud and clear from our parents and from our focus groups, and in our session with Dr. Watkins, I thought that was one of the focus areas that we as a board.
I'm wondering if, as you're looking at this, you might want to have something like that as part of your value statement. because in a goal statement, I'm not so sure if the joy of learning isn't an outcome of what we're trying to do in this strategic plan. Your value statement drives the entire process. But measuring the joy of learning, while it's something we can do, will certainly be something that takes us away from some of what we're trying to do in establishing what a satisfying experience would be in teaching. I would hope that one of the satisfactions in teaching would be that the teachers say, we would like to see students enjoy learning. We may get to the conversation through some of what we're incorporating into the new goals or the new focus areas. That was our intention.
Aaron?
Linda, I agree with you on that. I remember our discussions in workshop and with groups and everything else about the joy of learning. At the same time, as Dr. Borf mentioned, how would we measure that, and if the joy of learning is something measurable? But in looking at what we have here, and I would add that in with, like, the marketing and communication. We have talked a lot about the communication internally and externally, community engagements and partnerships, and the school climate. And in those areas, the joy of learning, I'm looking at it not just as what the students receive out of it, but their families, the community, and especially our teachers, because it would be my thought that our teachers get a joy of learning as they teach, learning from the growth of the students that they teach. No, I'm still not sure how we're going to really measure the joy of learning, but I really feel that if somehow, if we can earnestly capture those 90% and those 95% in these categories down here, there will be joy, not just from the students, but also with the teachers who are learning from the students that they teach as well.
I just feel like it was so loud and clear with our amongst our focus groups that, I mean, we heard that loud and clear from every single group, and especially the parents.
Especially the parents, yeah.
And I just feel like that we need to figure out if we need to measure it, then we need to figure out how we can measure it.
How might you incorporate that? I mean, where do you see it?
It's under leadership values.
Yeah, I know it's there.
Now, but it doesn't lead. That paragraph is very passive. The following leadership values will support. For me, as I rewrote that paragraph, I started, the joy of learning will drive all. And when we start, this document is going to be shared, I hope. And so even rearranging the sentences in that paragraph that introduces the joy of learning, or introduces leadership values, would put more emphasis. Right now, it just almost feels like an afterthought in that paragraph to me.
Well, yeah, I guess I just don't want it to get lost.
Exactly.
I think starting it with the joy of learning is a good idea.
And if you make
that can be
it,
revised too.
Make it the
if
Let
it
me-
becomes a goal, then it's not going to get lost.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'm not so sure that your whole pathways conversation wasn't a way of trying to get to creating that joy, because the idea was if students knew where they were in the process, they would work harder understanding what their rewards were all about,
Well, and they
why
get
they were getting
engagement.
rewards.
well, that was part of it, but there was a big part of kids wanting to go to school and enjoying what they were doing and engaged in what they were doing and wanting to do what they were doing. And I remember specifically parents talking about they wanted testing de-emphasized, and I know that testing is, we don't have a choice.
Right.
But they wanted a balance, and I think that's what they were saying. We want a balance, and we feel like that it's not balanced right now. And so whether it means, looking at our practices or, I don't know. I mean, I think one of the ways you can measure, if you ask kids, they're going to tell you whether they're enjoying learning or not. I mean, they're very honest.
I think attendance measures that in a lot of ways.
Yeah. But I
Especially
think
at
the
that high
point
school
is,
level.
we need it articulated so that people know that we're paying attention to it.
That's-
And maybe
agreed.
maybe the conversation we've just had, I think the joy of learning has to be a value, and it may be a leadership value, and we have to, and.
Well, I think we
even
talked
put
about the fact that we need to, and I thought that's where the teachers and the REA was going to maybe, help us also to define, what exactly does the joy of learning mean? And,
But why can't we
wanna
just have
see
a
it.
simple statement under the leadership value? If we rearrange that paragraph and we start out with the very first leadership value is that folks will experience the joy of learning as a leadership value and then put the strategies together, because isn't that what you're going, I mean, this document can't have strategies.
That's right. The strategies come after, and quite honestly, the REA is looking forward to talking to us in the development of the strategies. I've had conversations with Scott Priest, the new president. He is looking forward to this, but we haven't had that opportunity just yet. If board members would like to make some suggestions on how we would make that leadership values paragraph, that's basically the same one that we had last year.
Right.
We could do that, and if you have some ideas on, I suppose this would come under school climate. If you have an idea on a goal that is a measurable goal, we can adapt that.
I think
Adapt this
that's where it
document
needs,
to that.
personally, I think that's where it needs to go. It can be a leadership value also, but I just feel really strongly that we need to attend to that. And
One of my concerns was the use of the word stakeholders.
And that was what we had last year, too.
I know, but, and it was a concern last year, because stakeholders are people who, our stakeholders are very diverse. They are not just our parents and our guardians and our students. They are our taxpayers. I mean, we are beholden to lots of folks. And so I didn't know if we needed to be more specific about which stakeholders are satisfied.
Well, now, that is a good point, because there are many stakeholders out there who are very determined that our focus should be achievement and test score achievement.
That's true.
And if we're not seeing that, we're not being accountable. And we heard from them loud and clear
Yes, we
during
did.
a time when we really struggled to be where we wanted to be. Now that we've moved in the direction that we're all satisfied in moving, we haven't heard as much from them, and that's where we heard from our parents. So that's a good point. Depending on the stakeholder group, they may have some different thoughts.
Well, and number 4 as well. If are we talking about only parents and students, or are we truly talking about all of our stakeholders in this community? Then the strategies for that, and if we are, and I don't mind number 4 under marketing and communication, I don't mind that being all stakeholders, because I want to make sure, the key the strategies that we can use to reach number 4 could be quite diverse. I mean, that means we really go after connecting the dots. We talked a lot about connecting with the community and all of that, so that's okay. But number 3 goes back to what Linda was saying, I think, about what we heard from our parents about joy of learning and that kind of thing. So I don't know, we need to think about that.
Well, the parents we heard from in our focus groups were pretty passionate about that. They felt like we emphasized the I-STEP scores, the graduation rate,
Right.
the measurables way too much, and that we needed to focus a little more on the softer side of education, because that's where the enthusiasm is born. I will also tell
Joy of
you,
learning.
everything,
Also, the caring part and the, that part of it, they talked about that also.
yes, not that they were saying that they don't feel that their children are cared for in the classroom.
Family environment,
Uh-huh.
they focused on that.
But last week, we heard, we had a tech conference here statewide. We had many people from throughout the state here at a technology conference. And one of the consistent comments, very consistent throughout, was that as you move to a one-to-one technology environment, which is what we've talked about and what's kind of hinted at in this document, some of what you're talking about, that family engagement, naturally occurs. The idea of a one-to-one environment is best supported in a situation where you have relevant, authentic learning taking place, where it's a problem-based or a project-based. The kids get out and connect with the communities, the parents connect with the community, and the joy is a natural consequence of the new strategy, the new effort. Now, we're not there yet, but it's exciting to think that that may be a consequence of some of the measures we're planning to propose to you in the very near future as we plan that. And why are we looking at that? One of the underlying reasons is getting at that joy that you're talking about, because we think joy and rigor will be merged at that point to produce what both negative and positive comments have been in the past few years.
Okay, Jeff?
Well, I had actually two different things. One, just to kind of follow up on when we had the parents group, which is, in my opinion, I think they're the ones that spoke the loudest. But I think maybe the joy of learning, or at least what I walked away with, was they wanted the students to be able to explore, to be able to have some more opportunities, to know what's ahead of them. So I think that's going to be measured in some way of satisfaction, both from the staff and the parents and the students. So I think we could create some kind of
That's kind of in there.
yeah, we can create some kind of a goal that allows that, and I think that would be wise. I guess the other question that I also have is more about the process, just so I'm on the same page, because we've done this process over a period of time, and to be honest with you, sometimes I kind of lose sight of exactly where we're at and what the next step is, because enough time passes in between that I've lost some of my thoughts. But that's because I'm getting older. But the next step here, I guess I'm more about benchmark, measuring them. So that's going to be more in the strategic plan or the process that's put together.
If you recall, we developed a strategic plan based on this document last year, and I reported that to you regularly throughout the year. And that was that grid that had all of these broken down, and we attempted to measure them. Some of the measurements were easy. The test scores and so on were easy. But we attempted to break that down, not just for the board, but also for each of the buildings.
So your goal would be then by one of the areas that we've all said that we had needed some improvement was the fact that it was so late in the year then when some of the methods were developed that we didn't really do a good job of collecting the data. And so have we got a process set up that within 30 days or 45 days that these benchmarks and all of this will be established, so we'll have a better...
Yes. Remember, our strategic plan in many ways will look like last year's strategic plan, just updated with some new goals based on where we ended last year. But for the new focus areas, I admit we'll have to develop some new benchmarks, but I don't think that's all that difficult. And we're going to begin talking about that. I have to I have to begin working with what I've heard tonight with the principals next week. We begin next week meeting with the principals in retreat, and one of the pieces I'm working on is the development of a strategic plan with them based on what I've heard here tonight. We may be just drafting a plan. I'll be working with the REA in the same manner. My goal is for you to come back at the next board meeting actually to approve a set of board goals, and then we'll tweak further the strategic planning that we're doing. My guess is by the end of August, we should have most of our strategic plan done.
But was all the data, it seems like all the data wasn't in when you
Right.
presented that to us.
You mean at the end of this last year? It's
Yeah.
still not. The I-STEP scores are still not in.
Right, so is this going to be an ongoing spreadsheet so we can see each year how?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We're going to try to keep that as consistent as possible so that year over year you can see. the
Okay, so
movement
when
towards
all
that.
the data gets in from last year's, then you will present that to us?
Yes. Yes.
Well, just following that with the data, because I thought there were some of the goals that we had some discussion on that may not have been measuring exactly what we had intended for those to measure, like behavior was one of the discussions that we had. So,
Well, we altered that just a bit, and we'll be doing that again in the form of strategies to show you what we're putting in place for that. As you know, we ended the year last year with a slightly different ideas where we might be going, for example, with community youth services, for example, with what we might be doing with students right there in the buildings. And those strategies will be included in the updated strategic plan.
My concern, Linda, really follows yours. The more I thought about the discussions we had, what's missing for me in this document is not just the joy of learning, but the fact that we wanted to be student-focused. There's an awful lot about everybody else, and I guess, I don't know how we can say that in a leadership value, but the first page didn't focus enough saying we really care about kids and students and they are our driving force. And that's what I got most out of our conversations as a board in our board retreat and planning. And the pathways were not really as much about pathways as much as about students. And that was missing in this document for me.
Well, to piggyback on the pathways, I also wonder if we shouldn't have something in there about parents, because we talked an awfully lot about parents, awareness for parents, so that they could lead and guide their child, along this career pathway. So I feel like that we can ask the students to be accountable for that, but we need the parents.
So would you add another goal under marketing and communication? 90% of our students demonstrate awareness, and
Well, under
Why not
community
parents?
engagement partnerships, you've got the engagement of parents.
Well, but it needs to be connected.
yeah.
To me, we talked about all kinds of things to help parents to be aware of careers and how to work with their child on thinking.
Is that a strategy, though? That would be a strategy, right?
But I think the point that's missing for me is we use those words. If those words don't appear in this document, then they aren't part of our vernacular. And we needed joy of learning and pathways to be part of what we do all the time. So however we put those phrases and words in this document, I think that's what's important, because if this is going to represent what we were talking about, those two phrases, were crucial.
Well, I think under leadership values, Pat, when you said, I was just writing here.
Of course you are. Good for you.
The joy of learning and individual success will drive the leadership values that will support the individual needs and talents of our students and employees. Something like
that.
So it starts with, that paragraph starts with that?
And then put the pathways in, under community engagement partnerships, 95% of parents, families, members, guardians are rated as actively engaged in their children's education as recognized by knowledge of, I mean, I think we can put those words. I think our conversations just need to be represented more intentionally.
Yeah, I guess, it being measurable, I guess, is important, but I don't think it's nearly as important as the actual, for instance, the actual pathways and the parents being involved with the kids and,
We know what it looks like. We know what joy looks like, I think. It's the measurement of it. Engaged kids, engaged parents who are satisfied with what's going on in our schools.
I feel like that we get hung up on that measurement, and then we kind of lose the focus of what we're really trying to do here for kids and
Which kind of goes
families
back to
and-
where you started, which was, if we're doing these things, we are setting a platform for joyful learning because the engagement is there, the parents are involved. We have a curriculum that is full of interaction. So kind of
But
does go
remember,
back
we're
to
trying to sell our school system, and part of what we said would sell our school system is this document. We want them to see in this document what it is that we heard.
And also, you talked about it as a goal, and I'm looking down at school climate. We have something about highly motivated employees, but we don't have anything about highly motivated students. We have safe and orderly learning environments. So maybe that joy of learning, engagement, pathways, some way, I don't know how to say it yet, but could be put
Technology, I mean, that all fits in that highly,
in that school climate.
Back and get it on.
When you say motivated students, what do you mean by a motivated student? How do you evidence a motivated student?
It's somebody that, I think it's somebody that is experiencing the joy of learning and is engaged.
And if they are engaged, will they be reading on grade level, at or above grade level? Will they be mastering the national standards? Will they be graduating at high numbers?
Yeah.
We have to think about how it all works together. If we have successful kids, and that's what we're shooting for in our goals, I'm not so sure we don't have highly.
But part of our discussion was we don't intentionally connect the dots and let people know what you just said in our documents so that they can actually
Yeah, it sort of pulls me.
I don't think that people would read this and say, oh, this is all about the joy of learning for our students. I mean, I just don't think that they would read this and say that. And so that's why I think we have to say it.
Yeah.
I'm not
and
so
live
sure
it.
that's not true. I can guarantee you that when the employees see this document, they're not going to just shout with joy
That's
and
correct.
say, this is,
And maybe maybe it's too much. Maybe we need to condense and combine and some way. I don't know. Because I was just going to suggest that something else be added now that I said that. But because I was looking at the community engagement partnerships, and it just popped in my, I mean, we have the community partnerships. We don't have anything about mentors. And we are always focusing on our mentors, and we always need more mentors. And so,
I see that as being one of our main community partnership strategies.
We have that in our,
is
I'm
mentor.
almost positive we have that in our strategies, because that's how we've communicated to Bridget throughout the year. Don't we have that in our strategic? And you know what? Some of your questions may be answered when you see the strategic plan, which gets to the interactivity there with our school improvement plans. I mean, the school improvement plans almost merge with the strategic plan that we're talking about.
It should.
Mentorships get involved in that, and we start
Yeah.
identifying what
So I
goes
think what
into
I'm
making
hearing, though, is
successful kids.
we just need to bring up the importance of the joy in the copy here.
Well, you said
I
it.
think it's measurable by these things that we probably, other than maybe there need to be a few more student pieces, but I think it's measured by what we have here. Well, this is my opinion right now, but I may change my mind. It's measured by what we have here already, but we need to make sure that it says what we mean, which what we said was we want this to be a joyful place. We want to focus on that as our main value, and sort of everything needs to point in that direction. So.
Well, and Pat's comment about stakeholders, then that has me wondering. So when we say 90%, well, 90% of 10 people who turn theirs in? I mean, or are we talking about, I mean, what are we talking about here? I mean, a lot of these are pretty ambiguous as far as, are we wanting to get at least half of our stakeholders to respond, or
But those are strategies where you say, yeah, we're going to measure, but
well, it's a goal, though, and it's 90% of stakeholders are very satisfied or satisfied with the educational services provided by RCS. 90% of,
and that's what I'm saying, though, when you put your strategies together, you say, in order to get that number, we're going to survey parents, and that's where I think you say how many is a good sample. I think then you say we're going to survey community members. This is how many is a good sample. I don't think you put those here. Am I wrong about
so
that?
have you done that before? Have you done that in the strategy?
We have done that before. I don't know that we did it in last year's strategies, as I think about it, but that's not out of the question. But I also think you can't dismiss whatever response you get.
Right.
I mean, you're not dismissing the fact that you only heard from about 5 parents in our focus group,
Correct.
5 or 6, who actually spoke up and made the comment that you're talking about joy of learning. You're not dismissing them, and I don't think we can afford to dismiss whoever contributes to those surveys, but we try to get a wide and a broad sampling of all the stakeholder groups, including parents, and we always send them out to the key communicators. So not all the people will be parents in our system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just don't want to give a false sense of, because it sounds as though that we're going to get a response back from all of our stakeholders.
And we don't.
And
we don't.
So, I think that's important.
We have really struggled to get more than 400 responses. And I'm not so sure that that's a good response rate, but when we start moving into the 400s, 500s, that's when it seems to be a more valid representation.
But in some ways, I think the summary of this conversation is, if we believe, and you articulated what we believe very well, that if we do all these things, people are going to experience the joy of learning. It just needs to be intentionally articulated on this page that that's what we're aiming for, that I guess that's what disappointed me in this document, that it didn't show the spirit of what it was that we talked about.
Well, it can be, that's why we're having this conversation. It can be tweaked. This is your document, and it needs to reflect what you're you're wanting to say or what you're thinking.
Well, in all honesty, we probably shouldn't have taken it out of the mission statement,
Yeah.
which we did.
You have a mission statement here, you can revise that too. That's what you wish.
Yeah, it's-
I think you're absolutely right.
that would have certainly
solves part of the problem.
That
been
solved it.
helped to connect.
All right, Dixie, let's get together and tweak that. We'll bring it back.
Put it back in.
One of our meetings.
You know, I think the importance of this conversation tonight, if, you know, we've had the focus group meetings, you've had, what, 2 different retreat sessions that went for hours and hours. You've had other conversations at this level in open dialogue. I think the important thing for you to understand, listening to one another, and for the community that's watching, is that this is not just a siloed document. It is living, breathing, and every year we will tweak this. It is ongoing, and you know what? At some point, you do have to say, this is the document we're going to live with for this year. And then
And
we
because
move
it's
forward.
living, we can tweak it
Uh-huh.
as we go.
But what I'm going back to Jeff's question, what I'm wanting to do is put in the hands of our building principals and staffs a document, this document, and then our strategic plan, so that they can begin working towards that. And remember, we didn't do that until January.
January or February.
So they're going to like the idea that we might get this in their hands into September.
Okay, so before we halt this conversation, what is it that you want us to do to get our ideas to you?
I like what Aaron talked about, having someone put together a rewording of the leadership lead-in. That's, if you would like to do that, that's fine. We could, I can be revising some of this as I've heard it tonight also, and send that out. And if some of you would like to toss some ideas my way, we'll be talking about it with the REA in the next 2 weeks.
Okay,
Doesn't it make more sense for us, for our subcommittee of us, to sort of summarize what we have said and send it to you?
It would be very
versus
helpful.
You trying to do that? That would be my suggestion.
okay. I need volunteers.
Pat had some thoughts.
I can meet Dixie and Aaron. Perfect. Dixie's our wordsmith.
Just as a side
Aaron
is
is our
the
grammarian.
executive committee going to meet with the REA as well? With you? Was that what we were talking about, too?
I was going to invite Linda to join us at the meeting. This is not a large group meeting. It may be just 2 members of their executive committee.
So who, because I would love to work on it also.
Okay,
Is it
well,
just
then if
Aaron
there are
and
4
Dixie
of
right
you.
now?
Or I could do
Pat,
that
are
too,
you
but-
involved too?
But only if you need that. But if, we can't have 4, so.
Okay, well, I didn't
Well,
know.
I can back out.
No, I mean, we have too many people.
Don't pick me, please.
Pat, I didn't know if you had volunteered.
I will volunteer if we need, if we're.
Okay,
Need
so
it, so
that's fine. You 3.
we'll send it to you and you work on it.
You 3.
No, you can do it. You and Aaron.
No, this is fine. I have enough
Let's flip a
going on
coin.
right now.
And if there are other ideas, send them to one of the committee members.
I understand.
They can
Yes.
work 'em in.
Thank you all for volunteering to do that. But you better put my ideas in. How's that?
Or else.
Really?
Or you convene another committee.
Another special meeting. Good job.
Wow. That's a nice way to end that conversation.
Say what you mean what you say. That's what
Who says there aren't perks to this job, you know? Okay,
Maybe.
thank you, Dr. Borff. Action items.
We have donations that we would like to present for official acceptance tonight. Mr. Coddington?
Tonight, we'd like to thank First Bank Richmond for their donation to Westview Elementary School, and the donation in honor of the 2013 Mentor of the Year, Chris Campbell, to benefit students in need at Westview. And Persipanco Painting, LLC, to RHF Athletics, painting of RHS football field shot clock boards and poles. You know, you have the opportunity to buy local, and when you buy local, you get local. And I mean, my understanding with Persipanco Painting, when all the sprucing up we're doing over there, he looked at the shot clock and the poles and said, those need to be done. I'll do that while I'm here,
How great.
and I'll take care of that. Thank you, Mr. Persipanco.
Cool.
And First Bank Richmond, our local bank, that's partners, that sees the benefit for the Mentor of the Year program. We thank these institutions for their very generous donation of $450. Thank
So
you.
moved.
Jeff Slifer makes the motion.
Second.
Seconded by Suzanne Darengowski. Comments or questions? Aaron?
I know that we send out a lot of paperwork, you know, from time to time, and we kill a lot of trees, so to speak. But we benefit from a lot of donations. I mean, some small, some large, everything. We say thank you, but not everyone who gives a donation hears our thank you from this.
We send a
meeting.
letter following this
I
meeting to
wanted
every
to-
one of them.
Good. I wanted to make sure that. I wasn't aware, but Bob, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We are ready for our 2020 vision.
Mr. Mays, would you like to come forward and update them on the status of our projects? I'm surprised he has energy to walk up to the podium.
I'd like to just give you a quick update because school will be in session by the next board meeting. So at Dennis, the bus drive, a little bit of rain held us up a little bit, but next Monday, they will start the asphalt work, sidewalks, and that apron out on 8th Street will be taken care of. And then they're going to seal the existing parking lot and fill in the areas that we cut out when we put in new curbs. The building itself, I think when we talked last time, we were going to give them up 17 classrooms. Well, we gave them 25 classrooms, the whole second floor except for 3, the art room and 2 science rooms, and then the pretty much on the whole first floor. That we've already moved in there. The custodians with John Hamilton, they've already emptied those 6 trailers that are out there, and they're, I think as of today, I think they're gone, and that now the custodians are going to be in there and setting up the rooms and dusting the furniture and things that because they've been in those trucks. And then on this Friday, Saturday, and probably work Sunday, on Monday we'll turn over 6 more rooms, and that we held off on the corridor flooring so that we could move all the furniture and not take a chance of damaging it. So now, starting tomorrow, they're going to be working around the clock for the next 4 or 5 days to get that in. And then the first floor office area will be ready Friday, August the 2nd, which will mean then we'll be 100% complete. A start of school, teacher, staff in there on the 9th, and we'll be ready the 12th. But we are on schedule and a little bit ahead at Dennis. At Charles, the carpet's installed in the 4 classrooms now. The painting's 95% complete, and that we're starting to install the casework tomorrow. And hopefully by Friday or Monday, we'll have those projects completed. On Hibbard, the north and south parking lots, if you've seen, we have all the concrete work completed on the south parking lot. The rains held us up a little bit. We developed a soft spot in one area that they're digging out now. They were going to start asphalting tomorrow, but we've held that up till Friday, and they said to keep Dennis on track, they're going to work Saturday, the asphalt people, because once they get Hibbard done, they're going to move right over to Dennis. So we'll have that done this weekend, both the north lot and the south lot. On the north lot, if you drive around behind the building, you can see where we're putting up a fence that's going to cover up those ugly trash containers that are there, and that we've dug out all the bad parts in the parking lot We put a new concrete apron to get into the parking lot, and so that'll also be finished at the same time. And inside Hibbard, the HVAC units, about the only thing left to be done on that, they're working on the temperature control. They have to patch the floors where the units are a little bit smaller than the original ones, but we saved enough carpet last year that we can patch those back in, and you won't see that at all. And then the one ceiling mounted units, they're working the ceilings back in and tying those up. So that's right on schedule and should be done by the middle of next week. The C.R. Richardson, I'll talk about that for a second. You know, we talked about the sprinkler plans that we approved last time. Well, they actually have 3 crews working there. There's 6 pipe fitters that are working on installing the sprinkler system, and they have the main pipes already completed in the XL area, both first floor and second floor. Now they're starting to do the runs that they go out into the classroom. So that's pretty much ahead of schedule also, because they know that school starts there on the 19th, and that once school starts there, if they're not done, then they have to work at night. So I'm sure that it'll be done before that. Then on the high school, the bleachers will be probably 95% completed by Friday and 100% completed by Monday. The field turf, again, the rain slowed us up a little bit. The problem with that is when that turf gets wet, and the one operation that you can't work in the rain is putting the rubber pebbles in, and so that they'll be back Monday and start that. They have a day and a half of work, and that project will be done. So
Is that what's in those white?
yes, that's what's in there. There's 140 of those that they have to put those on the track on the field. I think Chad's got a new scoreboard that they're putting up, because the one that's up there now, last year about halfway through the season, kind of smoked and burned up a little bit. So that's going to be installed Friday. And if you drive by there, the one thing I like about the football field is those neat goalposts.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really bright yellow, and it looks like a professional field sitting out there with the goalpost. So that all of our projects, there's not a one item on any project that we will not be done on August 2nd. So when I come back at the 14th August meeting, I'll be able to say we're 100% complete on all of our projects. And at this point, it looks like we're going to have some money come back to us pretty much on every project, and you're going to do one tonight when Bob presents that. That's the gymnasium part. We did a kind of a breakdown of where we were, and we're in good shape.
Amazing.
You know, we're going to change your first name to Magnificent. Magnificent Maze.
I just wanted to ask one question because I can't figure it out. Down at Hibbard, how are the buses going in and coming out?
No, at Hibbard, we decided because of we weren't having buses up at CR that it worked so well last year to put the buses on the street on the north side of the building. And that's the way we did it last year. They loaded and unloaded on the street. So we will not have a bus drive at Hibbard.
They'll load on J Street?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's
The circular drive is for parent drop-off.
Okay,
or
because I
student
couldn't
drop-off
figure
by
out how
parents.
in the world a bus was going to,
yeah.
I thought there's no
Yeah,
way.
That's right. I'm sorry. They are for parents to
Just
drop
parent
off
drop-off.
and pick up, and then staff parking or visitor parking on the parking lot there.
Okay.
Hopefully it'll alleviate that line of cars that forms on L Street.
Hopefully.
I have a feeling
Yes.
it won't take it
Yes,
out
that's-
completely, but at
that's
least they'll
what we're
keep it
shooting
moving.
for. Because of the year, we're going to go ahead and plant grass seed, and grass seed is best planted in August, believe it or not. That's when you typically would do that. Then we have some landscaping that we're going to do, but we're not going to do that until after the first frost. And so we look like that we'll have the landscaping in there in October. and then that would complete the project.
Great. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Magnificent maze.
Like the elves in the hollow tree.
M squared.
There we go. M squared.
Give him a shirt.
Okay, we are now at our press conference.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. You have any questions?
I save mine to the end.
Okay. I know that. We are now ready for consent items.
Our consent items tonight involve the approval of our July 10th, 2013 board minutes and executive session, recommendation from Human Resources, including an addendum that has been posted to the web, also recommendation by accounts payable, recommendation for a latchkey agreement, recommendation for corporation-sponsored travel, fall overnight athletics, a recommendation to accept a Dennis Intermediate School deduct change order. Mr. Mace just made reference to that. Also, authority for the board president to sign a contract in reference to EDS number A58414SE1661.
I hope I don't have to remember those numbers and letters.
You'll be tested.
Okay, do I have a motion? Pat Heine, seconded by Aaron Stevens. Comments or questions? Jeff?
The latchkey agreement that we have with the Y, I didn't have, I was going to go back and look. For some reason, I thought, did we have that at Cresto last year? Or is it just at Charles?
No, it was just Charles. We moved everything to Charles last year. Before they had been at Westview and I think it was C.R. Richardson. And then because of the research that the Y did, Charles seemed to be the best place, and it turned out to be the best place. They had more kids enrolled this year than they've had in a very, very long time. So they ended up the year with 91 kids. I think that was the last number I got that was enrolled there. So they would prefer, their preference is to remain at Charles, although they will be at C.R. Richardson for some after-school activities. But as far as this particular agreement, the site location, they would prefer to keep at Charles.
Well, I was just, as I was looking at, trying to look at the after-school programs that we offer, I know we
Right.
have the Boys and Girls Club that's at
Correct.
Fairview, but it just, with the Boys and Girls Club on the south side, Charles being on the south side, and now C.R. Richardson being the white on the south side, I was a little concerned about representation for the latch program for kids after school at the basically the other four elementary schools. So I didn't
Right.
know.
But
Hopefully we
But aren't they
got.
all
they're
bused?
bused. They sign up. The parents sign up when they register their children, and they get transported to Charles if that's the need. They also get transported to the Boys and Girls Club,
Yep.
and we also have a relationship with Girls Inc. and they're bused there as well. Previously, I believe Townsend was on one of those stops as well. Obviously, there's some conversations that need to take place about.
Have we surveyed the parents in each of the elementary school buildings to see whether they wanted to have it in their own building, or I just want to make sure.
Yeah, and a
that-
part of that, Jeff, too, is, we did do that 2 years ago. The interesting factor of that was that we had a high response from Westview. Same program was offered at Westview at other sites, but it died down as the year went on, and it cost the YMCA more money to service that building. And so this program, we're not giving any money to the Y to offer the latchkey program. We're offering them space. We offer transportation to the kids to get there. But it's their program, their dollars. They have to make it work financially. So that was the point. Now, I'm not going to dismiss the fact, as our enrollment continues to grow, we probably need to look at what other programs can we offer and what do we need to do in some of either before school or after school conversations, because at least one other school I know in Richmond has offered that before school and after school care. So I'm not going to dismiss that we need to have that conversation, preparing us for next year. Absolutely.
Good enough.
Okay, anyone else? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we're ready for our second public commentary. Anyone in the public wishing to speak? Everybody's looking at everybody else. Okay, seeing none, we are ready for follow-up, old business. And I have been taking notes on my phone of things I want to ask. ISTEP, any word from ISTEP?
We did get a memo last week from the DOE. We had anticipated that we would get a list of names in July of students who were being considered for invalidation, and we were to look at those names and then let the DOE know which names we felt should be invalidated, their test scores. We have not received anything, and so the memo that was put out from the DOE last week said that they're continuing to work with their private vendor to review those tests, and they're going to work with that vendor to create a timeline of when we might expect movement. So I'm not anticipating those anytime soon.
Interesting. Okay. The next thing on my list is, since we're not going to be having a board meeting before school starts, Mr. Coddington, do we have everything in place for our buses? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
Not on the spot. I am delighted that the cooperation that we have with our partner Student Transit, that as we speak, every student at the bus garage, the people at the bus garage right now are calling every student in our organization, asking where they live, confirm if they have a phone number, they have an address, and we have the same one, saying, this is your bus, this is a time we will pick you up, this is a stop, we will do it. Be patient with us as we get the first couple of days to do that. Now, realizing that hopefully we don't have 1,100 students that we don't know where they are the first day of school, but we will have some. But we will have a much smoother start to school as we go into our second year through this restructuring of Richmond Community Schools. I'm confident.
Could I relay something that a teacher said to me the other day about busing from the building standpoint? They were talking about last year because they didn't get, I guess, they might have gotten some kind of a list of kids, but it wasn't specific to their school, and especially smaller elementary students, you know, they don't know what bus they rode on, or they forget or whatever. So do you provide a list for each elementary school of the kids' names and their bus numbers?
As much as we know, yes, we do. We can and we will.
Okay. I think that will ease a lot of people's...
The other thing that I want to say that we're going to do different to try to keep a better schedule, by the elementary schools dismissing early. We have a rule, and it's a good rule, that no K first or second grader will be dropped off without an adult to pick them up. Well, there are occasions that there's not an adult there to pick them up. So they run their 45-minute route in 55 minutes, because that's what it's done. They have 45 minutes to run a 55-minute route before they have to get to the middle school or the high school, which is a secondary route. So if you have to go back to Vail to drop that student off, that's another delay to get to your next place. We're going to have, on the first day of school, we're going to ask that every driver take those students to their next stop, be it Test, Dennis, or the high school. The student gets off there. We will have child care provided for them there until a parent can make arrangements to come pick them up. So we expect, and that will happen, now that's a change for parents, because they would say, hey, my kid was, why didn't I pick him back up at Vail? But we were having buses last year continually late to the high school, Dennis, and Test for taking the students back to the elementary school. We think this is one of the solutions to help keep buses on schedule.
Linda, do you have another bus question? Are we going to have two routes for the intermediate, or are we going to have one route for the intermediate?
One.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my question, too.
Okay. Any more busing questions before I?
I've
Oh,
got
we
one.
got more?
Well, I don't have questions, but I'm already getting calls, as the bus garage is, and when they don't get the answer they want from the bus garage, they call me, and that's what I'm for. But I have a kindergarten student, and you want them to walk a block and a half, that's unacceptable. You will be picking them up at the door-to-door. We have a 2-block maximum for an elementary student to walk, and there are groups of people that find that unacceptable. So I put with the parents as saying, we are doing our best. You want them picked up at 4 o'clock in the morning, we'll do door-to-door service and drop them off at 8. No, I mean, we've got to have this within 45 or 55 minutes. We have 45 buses. We have a budget to which we have to live within. I don't believe, as the school board and Dr. Borff and everyone, that a 2-block walk rate is excessive. So we would appreciate the board's support as we start school, too, as we move forward with this in the, but I'm looking forward to the start of school. I think we're going to have a great start to school.
Great, thank you. We will look forward to that. Okay, could you give us an update on I know that there were a couple sessions being planned for Galileo families, and could you give us a little update on how that?
Those sessions took place while I was not in the state, but we had very competent individuals who did take care of those arrangements, and I would like to turn that over to Mr. Millis, Dr. Parker, to give you some details.
We held 2 sessions at Townsend Center, and each session was attended by, or we enrolled approximately 40 to 45 at each session. With that, they also brought family members too, so we had quite a crowd, and I think most of them were very interested in getting their students enrolled. So we really spent most of the time pre-enrolling and enrolling when we could. From there, then we had a working number, and Dr. Parker has done a lot of the work on calling families and trying to get out the information and have them get online and to enroll. And we've been also, I think, fairly successful with that. I don't know what our final count. I know we're over 120, but probably more than that, maybe.
Yeah, we have, as of today, 122 of the KC STEM students confirmed for registration. We have 3 additional students that have requested early entrance to kindergarten, and they'll go through our assessment process. If they don't enroll in kindergarten, we do hope to enroll them in preschool. We have 21 other students who have indicated they will not be attending Richmond Community Schools. A lot of them have moved out of the district, out of the state, in fact. And then we have an additional 39 students that are unaccounted for. We have made several attempts to phone those families and left messages. We anticipate many of those will show up at our door on the first day of school. We're going to do our best to get home visits, to make contact so that we know if they're coming or not, to ensure that we have a spot for them. So we're doing all we can to get them all with us.
Great. And we're accepting enrollment from everyone, right?
From everyone. We did online pre-registration. We did close that down, Mr. Tidrow, on Monday. And now, if they need to register, they can call us. We'll get their name, and then they can go to the school and do the actual registration.
So they need to call?
They can just show up to school during the registration week, but the earlier they call us, it would be helpful for us if we knew they were coming.
So what number would be appropriate?
973-3418 will work, and they can speak to me, or they can speak to my assistant, Debbie Baker.
And so those are the Casey STEM families, because all the rest of the families just received.
Anyone.
Yeah, I know, but all the rest of the families just received a mailing that said we have to go online to do.
That's if you are a current student or if you had pre-registered. But if you have not pre-registered and we don't know you're out there, we would like to know about you.
So new students who haven't pre-registered should call that number.
Right.
973-3418.
Okay, and while we're talking about enrollment and registration, aren't there a couple of activities this weekend for families to attend to get supplies and immunizations?
There's one at the Townsend Center this Saturday. I have to check the website for the exact.
11 to 1.
11 to 1. It's the Old Richmond, or the North Richmond
North Richmond
revitalization.
neighborhood. And it will be mostly on the old Nicholson property. And it is sponsored by the Minority Health Coalition and the North Richmond Neighborhood Steering Committee.
But they're going to have people there for immunizations, aren't they? And
backpacks?
Backpacks and other information that would be.
And we will have a
valuable.
booth there. We'll have a booth there, so people can,
Richmond Community Schools will have a booth,
we will.
so everybody come on Saturday. Okay, thank you. Do we know anything about the Excel Center and how that's progressing?
Well, the Excel Center is moving forward. Their improvements at C.R. Richardson indicate that they're taking very seriously their commitment to making that building ready. If you go over there, there's a lot of demolition and reconstruction taking place right now. But they also contacted our office to find out if there was another location for them to operate so that they can register new students, since CR won't be available to them. And I am seriously considering making available to them this boardroom or the lobby. Those are pretty recognizable and familiar locations for the community. But I also want to indicate, I don't know that we have publicly talked about the Highland Heights building, but in recent days we've had some interest expressed in the use of Highland Heights. But if you recall, the General Assembly implemented new legislation on how we go about making buildings available. So one of the things that we have to do is file an appeal with the Department of Education, which we have done, to remove or get an unused building waiver. That's what it's called. That has to go out statewide to determine if there is any objection to our taking that off the list. Well, I wanted to let you know that as of, I think this was just today, maybe it was yesterday, I received from Kevin Davis, who is the interim president of the Public Charter Schools Association, that they do not plan to file any kind of objection. And he says just went off. The Indiana Public Charter Schools Association takes its role in these matters very seriously and will file qualified objections only when needed to assist an established or emerging charter school in that community. Therefore, they know of none. So we will be coming to the board with further information about removing Highland Heights, and we'll be talking in the next few weeks, I would guess, about the new use of Highland Heights, and which I think is just another partnership that we'll be talking about.
Wow, that's great. Okay. And one more thing, how about the China travels? And the students that are going to be traveling here also.
Would you like to?
You go ahead and begin.
We had, it's exciting. We had our first group went and had a wonderful experience. I don't know if Mrs. Andrews had shared any emails with you. Some of those we've saved, we can forward to you, but she really, I guess you could say, blogged her daily experience on behalf of the first trip, and it was just really interesting to watch it. Our second group went last Thursday, and
The first group, that was their partner school.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. I mean, I did some other visiting of other educators, but that was the main reason for them to attend, was to build their relationship with their partner school. Treated very well, almost like royalty is how Mrs. Andrews referred to it. And I'm sure if any of you have not seen Mrs. Chris Buchholz, she was still glowing last Thursday. She just had a wonderful, wonderful experience through it all. Our second group went, and they actually were teaching summer school for last week and this week. They are returning in Indianapolis Saturday at 5:30 in the morning. And my understanding, I've not seen any communication. They've had a good experience, but it has been a little challenging from the standpoint they've had no air condition. It's very, very hot there, very humid. It's just a different environment than what they're accustomed to. But Kathy, Kathy Iyer is their team leader, and I know she's communicated with Mrs. Andrews, and while there's been challenges, it's been a good experience too. It's been good for them to go through something like that. So they are returning on Saturday. We are in the midst. We have issued I-20s. As you know, we are certified now with the federal government to issue I-20s for international students. And I would say that it's really been fun because it's not just the Chinese students that are interested in Richmond Community Schools. We have one that we've already done an I-20 for that's from Africa. Her parents actually will be at Earlham School of Religion, and they did not want to have to leave their child in Africa. So they are able to bring her here, and she'll be able to complete her education at Richmond High School. And then we are working on another one as well right now. So it's been really, I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to grow the international program, and I'm excited about it. We are in the midst. I know Charles is working hard with their host homes. I think they're doing a really good job. We have a meeting on Monday with Jessica Yu, who is our coordinating body or entity to help us with the Chinese students that will be coming in next in August, later in August. So we are still looking for host homes. You'll see a lot of ramped up communication about that. I needed a real firm number on who our students were, their ages, their race, and now we know for sure, and we'll know for sure in the next couple days of what that looks like. So we'll be moving quickly in that area. So it's coming together, coming together.
I hope we have a chance to meet them.
The
here
students?
At the board meeting.
The students? Oh, I'm sure we can arrange that.
And I think that
Sure
would
we
be
Have a reception.
the inaugural group. Kind of important.
Now, aren't the younger students coming over soon?
Mid-August. I can reissue those dates, or when we do a communication from Dr. Bohr, if we can include that to you of those dates. Now, I'll know Monday if those dates have changed. That is very possible, that the dates that we originally were told could have made some adjustments, might have been made based on flights and all that kind of other issues. So we'll know for sure, and I'll share that with Dr. Borf, and I'm sure we can communicate. Hopefully he'll be able to communicate that out to you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any follow-up or old business?
I just have a celebration. Are we there yet?
We are ready for superintendent and board reports, reflections, celebrations. Dr. Borf, do you have any?
I have a couple celebrations. One of the celebrations has to do with the meeting that I referred to that took place at the high school last week. Technology hosted a statewide meeting, and we had many people from throughout the state. I would like to commend Mr. Tidrow and his staff for what they did, but we also need to just commend a lot of people who worked to make that happen over at the high school. Staff members of various types. We also had students who served as some summer interns with us who helped people in parking lots. They helped put everything together for us. And I would like to commend them. Also like to commend the people who are working right now, and I'm not so sure if it's just Lori Fields who's coordinating a science seminar right now over at the high school, and that also involves many individuals.
Yeah. We have about 105 teachers participating, and I would commend also the facilitators. I'll probably miss somebody's name, so I won't do that. We've done that before, but we have a group of teachers who are trainers for ISI around the state.
Are they the ones that came and did the press? Okay.
So I think it's going well. I'm not sure we knew the technology needs that they needed, so Rob's been checking in on that. So that will go through end of next week.
Great.
And another set that I wanted to commend before we move on would be our maintenance crew. I I see Glenn sitting out there, and John Hamilton was out there earlier. My name somehow has ended up on the fire department list. So I've been getting some calls recently in the middle of the night, and I've made a run. I made one over to Fairview, and my name isn't going to stay on there because
It's already off. Mine got added.
Oh, you have farther to go.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't really add a whole lot to the effort, but I have to tell you, for one thing, I commend our maintenance staff because they are very helpful. When I went over there, they knew right where to take our emergency personnel, and you know what? It was a valid call the night that I went because something had happened. A motor had burnt, and when you walked into Fairview Elementary, there was a haze and there was a definite smell, and it was a little frightening because we didn't know what we were going to find up in the ceiling. But our emergency fire workers were right there and very thorough, but so was our maintenance staff member. And it's been a while since I've made a 3 in the morning run or whatever that was, but it was a good experience. That happens all the time. When you have as many buildings as we have, it happens frequently, and I think we need to draw special attention to these people who aren't just here from 9 to 5 or 7 to 3, whatever their work day is. They make calls all hours of the night, and we're grateful for what they're doing.
I couldn't remember that we had celebrated our Skills USA team that won third. They were here, remember? We saw what they won at the state, but they won third in the national. And Brian did a nice article about them in the paper, and we hadn't acknowledged that. And the second thing is, we will not have a board meeting before Band Day, and so we need to recognize that Band Day. You have all of that right there?
The ice cream social is Sunday, July 28th, and you can buy these awesome fans for
Which you will
$1, which you will need because it's going to be burning hot, to support the music
I've
program.
already paid for mine.
And where is the ice cream social? It
that's
has
a good
changed.
It's a test.
It's a test.
Yes, now it's test.
Thank you.
Intermediate.
Yeah.
I did see that.
But we need to wish our band they're at band camp right now. We always
Absolutely.
use this board meeting to kind of send them off to victory.
And I think you're going to like the program. The little piece I saw, there is red everywhere, and I am loving the red. So I'm just saying.
Cool.
Well, I would like to thank Glenn for all of your work and your commitment and for stepping up to the plate. And, you'll have to tell John he missed it, but thank him also on our behalf because you certainly help make things happen for a lot of kids.
Say
And
another summer of a
we
lot of
really
projects.
appreciate that. And Karen, thank you for helping Mr. Coddington with the budget and getting that completed. We appreciate
Not
all the
realizing
work that you
we're
do
all old.
also and for enduring this board meeting.
Here, I want to.
Thank you so much.
I want to give a thank you on, I found out that there was a mix-up from what I understand, and they may have to have canceled the ice cream social, because it was going to be at the Raper Center,
It's a
and there was a
test.
conflict. So they said, can we have it at Test? And you want to think how our departments get along. They went to Chad Bowles, and he says, do we have any bleachers that we can get out there? Because of what's going on at the high school's football with the soccer stadium, he said, there's no hurry, but we're going to go get the bleachers that we bought and we put out at the Freeman Park.
Nice.
Chad sent the custodial staff out to Freeman Park to disassemble the bleachers, take them to Test, assemble them. He took his football lining crew out there that won't be doing that much at the high school anymore. They lined the whole field at Test, and we're having band day and ice cream day on Sunday because of the cooperation of the athletic department and the band
great.
department.
Will they leave the bleachers at Test for the season?
Now, that I'm not sure.
I don't look for that to happen. I think they're going to be reusing those for new purposes at the high school for the
I
band.
saw those bleachers there, and I wondered what was
Yeah.
going on, so
Cool.
that's wonderful. Anybody else? Celebration? Okay, then we are adjourned.